Ah, es nimmt noch auf, ja, okay. So, wie sieht's aus? Können wir starten?
Ja, so vorbereitet, bitte.
Ich würde sagen, wir fangen an, ne?
Hello, good morning and welcome at the UN 76th high-level general debate. This week, we're also at the 6th annual UN Sustainable Development Goals and Global Human Rights Gathering. For 6 years, we've joined at the margins of what is the mainstream movement for actually having multilateralism that matters. It's been very important at these annual opening weeks of the UN General Assembly, where the world takes stock of how we're doing with two of the major frameworks for making sure we will have a planet to live on and a future for all of humanity. The first one, of course, being the UN Sustainable Development Goals. It's a very important framework that looks at the 17 global goals that provide a path for us going forward. The second one being the UN Paris Agreement. This year on our 6th annual, there's a couple of important documents. First, we saw on Monday the SDG moment, the meeting where the UN Secretary General made a global call to the world of what must be done as we go forward. Second is actually the focus that will begin today, the climate change roundtable that took place also on Monday. We know we need to look going forward, but today we actually have a summit hosted by President Biden after his first address to the General Assembly, looking at COVID and focusing on SDG number 3, good health and well-being. Today, though, we'll be focusing on a very important nation, really the heart of Southeast Asia. And we'll be looking, of course, and reviewing the voluntary national review of the Lao PDR, which took place just during the summer months. This is very important, of course, as we're on the first day of fall here in New York City with the leaves changing. But what's really important is if you look at the high-level political forum and you look at the voluntary national review, this is really a process where countries should look at how they're doing and ways we can go forward. But unfortunately, there's not a strong SDG 16 where people can share and discuss about democracy and what's important as we go forward. I would like to first welcome Bounthone Chanthalavong Wiese to share with us a bit about the state of the UN SDGs and human rights inside Laos.
Okay, thank you, Joshua.
Cheers.
Give me please host, Joshua. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dr. Bounthone Chanthalavong Wiese. I am the president of the Alliance for Democracy in Laos, ADL, an independent NGO for human rights and democracy in Laos, with headquarters in Germany. In my presentation, I will focus on SDG 1, 2, and 16. The ADL, as part of the group of independent NGOs, we come to the conclusion that the VNR presented by the Lao government on July 15, 2021, unfortunately does not correspond to all facts. The Lao foreign minister has responded that development has been made more effective. It is claimed that hunger has been taught effectively. In fact, 80% of the population are in poverty and have less than $5 per day to live on. The rest of the population live well by using international aid for their ends. This is part of the rampant corruption at all levels of the state in Laos. Often the international aid for the population does not reach those effective. I would like to show you my presentation. Many mega projects are being carried out by the government to fight poverty. Today, the projects have too little benefit to the country's development. In the foreign companies that really sign these mega projects bring their workers with them from their home countries. Hardly any jobs are created for the people in Laos. The profit often go abroad tax-free. So even this income does not go into the government of the country. The national debt is growing rapidly as a result of these projects, which only increases the countries dependent on foreign countries. In addition, many of these projects are one of the causes of land grabbing in Laos. With its mega project, Laos particularly prides itself on having done a lot for the hydropower plants for climate change and development. Many of these dams were building with support from China. In fact, the hydropower plants have turned into the disaster. Since then, the Mekong and its tributaries have suffered from an extreme alternative between water shortage and extreme floods. Dam breaks have caused a great number of victims who have not been adequately compensated to this day. The fish stocks are falling extremely. The forest stocks, which have been decimated by massive clearing, are being further reduced. The development in Laos is by no means effective. After 40 years in government, the communists have still not managed to solve the country's main problems. The country's only solution is to ban criticism of the government in the country by depriving the people of freedom of speech and increasing control over the people. Time and again, human rights activists disappeared or are murdered in Laos. The case of Chanthalavong and a democracy activist from Laos is particularly mysterious. He disappeared in Thailand in 2019 under previously unexplained circumstances. Sombat Sompon disappears on December 15, 2012. The official still denies any knowledge about the ongoing of this case. Instead of allowing and independent investigation the public conspiracy theories. In August 2020, the human rights activist Bounthhom was found shot dead on the edge of a country road about 13 kilometers from his home in province Bolikamsai. The authorities have not started any investigation and have forbidden the relative and friend of the human rights activist to speak about this case. On July 2017, gave insight to one scenario where illegal land grab occurred in the district Banjup, city Peng, province Peng. 14 people were arrested by Lao authorities. Independent non-governmental organizations that advocate human rights and or environmental protection are prohibited by Decree 238. The lack of independence of the three state powers, judiciary, legislative, and executive, as well the own-controlling Communist Party, which do not allow any opposition, are also preventing the country from advancing. The Lao government prizes the partnership with other countries. This primarily refers to the partnership with Vietnam and China. Laos had been dependent on the neighboring countries since the signing of the friendship agreement with Vietnam in 1977 and has been completely under the political control of Vietnam since the communists came to power. The agreements with China are more recent and are mainly for economic reasons. Recently, however, Laos has also become increasingly dependent to China. We see that the massive settlement of Chinese people, the establishment of the special economic zones, and the establishment of the Chinatown, in which Laotians mostly have no accents, lead to the fact that the rights of the locals are being suppressed more and more. Our recommendation: 1. Stop the destruction of the environment, natural resource, and wildlife of Laos, and cease the uncontrolled construction of dams and polluting factories, as well as the massive land grabs all over the country. 2. Respect the human rights of Lao people in accordance with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and completely with the treaties and conventions of the UN and other international human rights documents to which the Lao PDR is a signatory. This on including the freedom of expression, assembly, and other. Stop Decree number 327 and 238 to end the total media control by the party and to end the restriction of NGO in Laos. 3. The international standard to governance, justice, and basic freedom hope to be implemented in Laos. Initiate change towards the democratic system of government with multi-party system, free, fair, and open election under the auspices and surveillance of the United Nations. 4. A public control of all institutions, including a publication of all the funds used and contracts with foreign investors will reduce the misuse and corruption. 5. Violation of international treaty and agreements must be sanctioned more strongly by the UN. If the human rights standards are violated, aid payments must be concerned. 6. Change for the dependence on Vietnam and China to a more equal partnership between the countries. Promoting partnership, not exploitation, between regional and global partners for equality and equity in Laos. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bounthone, for beginning our discussion today. I now would like to welcome Bounthom Chantha from France to share his perspective around the UN Sustainable Development Goals and global human rights with our case study of Laos. Thank you, Bounthom. Marcos, thank you for continuing the tradition.
Bonsoir, Dr. Cooper. Good evening, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. I am Bounthom Chantha, Vice President of Alliance for Democracy in Laos, French chapter. And my presentation today will be in two parts. Above all, I would like to give an abstract of the event 5 days earlier. So it was about SDG 9, 11, and 12 in my presentation. I think it is very useful to be recalled that deficiency of traffic infrastructure brought in poor condition during the monsoon season. From May to October, you can see impossible path and difficulty to get around the country, difficulty to get to the school for the children. Please, Dr. Bounthone, do you show up on the screen the photo to have a visual idea of the extent of pain, please? I continue. Difficulty access for children to go to school. The economy almost paralyzed. According to the testimony from members in Laos, funds planned to the road construction have been embezzled for other projects. The railway construction, Lao government leading project, put the country in an enormous debt, plus environmental and social impacts. For example, land grabbing, displacement of the family. The SDG 11 is very linked to SDG 9. I mean, lack of infrastructure and the misplanning still hinder many communities in Laos with an emerging urbanization. A very different problem appears. Migrant workers go from city to town, mainly to the capital Vientiane. One figure, Dr. Cooper, 26.6 in 2020, the share of population living in urban areas. And another concern is pollution, malnutrition among urban families, waste management, lack of adequate drainage and sewer system, diseases, water sanitation. Lao government needs according to the World Bank, to invest $20 million annually for this. But a crucial concern is unemployment of young workers forcibly cross the border to Thailand looking for jobs to make their living, and at the same time be the main breadwinner for the whole family staying in the country. COVID-19 pandemic forced them now to get home due to job loss and sanitary crisis. Now, responsible consumption and production pattern, the pillar of Sdg 12. In this field, Lao government give only priority to mega project and special economic zone, especially for investors from China. For some reason, to promote his economic and national plan of development. But any benefit for the population, 30% of land and maybe more belong to foreign investors. Land of inferior quality offered to the Laotians, therefore difficulty for them to manufacture their own products and ensure their own economy independence. A serious concern overlooked nowadays in Lao PDR is bananas plantation owned by Chinese firms. Example, poisoning soil and water by use of chemical particles. I give you an example. The 7 main regions affected by this issue are Phong Salie, Luang Nam Tha, Pho Keo, Udom Sai, Luang Prabang, Senyaburi, and Vientiane. It is really a major health and environmental scourge nowadays in Laos, according to Asian Today magazine. My second part now is kind of analysis. In my opinion, actually, I realized when we look closely on the economy and social development, we see the insufficiency of infrastructure of all sorts, which did not create the key success of economic growth and social value creation to lift community of Lao citizens out of poverty and give them access to jobs, creating opportunity to make their living on the sustainable path. The pandemic COVID-19 cannot explain all this situation in Lao PDR, as the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Salamsai Omasit, want to let us know and believe that on the SLPA debate held on July 23, 2020, he said as follows: the pandemic COVID-19 undermined decades of social economic effort and disrupt years of progress made on implementation for the SDG development and exacerbate the already existing vulnerabilities and challenges that we have prior to the pandemic. As the result, our sustainable development aspiration on eliminating poverty, the LDC, least developing country as we are, have more difficulty to overcome the challenging task to return to a new normal lifestyle. End of quotation. Actually, you know, assistance and support for Lao PDR from international community exists on the resounding principle of leaving no one behind. But frequently, assistance and support have been embezzled for initial goal by the official for their personal interest. You get my meaning, right? Example, for education, and health from EU, France, from USA, the WHO, Canada, Japan, and Australia, plus vaccine anti-COVID-19. With his disingenuous attitude, Lao PDR take any account of international community. For example, the key human rights principle known as Peng say participation, accountability, non-discrimination and equality, empowerment and legality. I think those are the great factors leading to a healthy environment necessary to fulfill aspiration of Lao citizens to enjoy the SDG development. But Lao communism, one-party state, ignore this principle, practicing the policy of authority, burying itself in issues that have nothing to do with the citizen need. Before ending up my presentation here, I would like to share with all of you the dashboard of assessment report on a decade of action for SDG of Lao PDR, published this year, 2021, by Cambridge University Press. So, SDG 1, 2, 3, and 7 seem to be improving moderately, but we don't think so, according to the perception and testimony from members inside the country. SDG 9 insufficient to attain goal. SDG 4, 13, 16, and 17 are stagnating. SDG 15 decreasing. The old SDG, challenges remain. The rank score of index of the SDG for Lao PDR is 110 out of the 165 countries. You know, everyone know long time ago the causes of this situation, namely widespread corruption, absence of transparency, lack of the rule of the law according to the global norm, violation of human rights. In conclusion, if you can bear with me, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to address the message to the United Nations and the stakeholders with this. One, to have the following up and review processes and mechanisms that will monitor international aid and implementation in Lao PDR. Two, to apply pressure to current government to reform the governance system based on freedom of all kind, because lack of these hurt people erode trust and create obstacles for development. Otherwise, what we did and what we will do will be much ado about nothing. Thank you for your attention. To you, Dr. Cooper.
Thank you so much, Bounthhom. That was great. And I really appreciate all of your research, Bounthhom. It was so thorough, and you really made the interconnectedness of all the issues. I think what was also so vital is really you pointed out why SDG 16 is so crucial. If we don't have peace, justice, and strong institutions, it's very difficult to honestly measure what's going on, as well as holistically have public policy that ensures the human rights of the people, but also to make sure that don't have racial inequality, that you don't have health disparity. And you really did a great job at making those links. I also have an excellent article that was just released yesterday that when Bounthhom gives me screen sharing towards the end, I'll also show it that reinforces a lot of the research you were citing, looking at the Belt Road Initiative of China, which then implicates both countries, that China has an obligation to do everything within its borders to reduce carbon, but also with its foreign policy. And that's also very similar, that Laos cannot allow China to increase its carbon by actually participating and doing things inside the borders of Laos. So you really came up with a lot of strong points. And now we will move on to Kambane Anonthisen in Canada.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph Cooper. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kambane Anonthisen, the President of Alliance for Democracy in Laos, Chapter of Canada. I will talk about the SDG number 7, number 13, and the human rights in Laos. SDG number 7 is about hydroelectric dam. Lao PDR government has allowed foreign investors, mainly from China, Vietnam, and Thailand, to build the hydroelectric dams, up to 100 hydroelectric dams on the year 2030. According to a report by Ministry of Energy and Mines, on December 2019, there are 73 hydropower plants in operation in Laos, and about 27 more dams are still under construction across the country. There are too many dams in Laos PDR. On July 23rd, 2018, Sapien Senamnoi Dam collapsed. In Attapur province, 19 villages were flooded. The report said more than 13,000 villagers have been affected. Hundreds were missing and 40 dead. The dams destroyed the nature and lives. The dams make only benefits to the foreign investors and Lao government officials from corruption. More electric dams were built, but the price of the electricity in Laos is so high. The dams make Lao ordinary people no place to live and no land for farming. They are poorer and poorer. Next would be SDG number 13, Deforestation and Mining project. In the past few years, the international NGOs repeatedly reported about illegal logging in Laos. Some time ago, the EIA, based in London, wrote a particularly revealing report about the rainforest in Laos is disappeared at an alarming rate. Independent experts fear that there will soon be no more forest in Laos. Not only EIA, but also Global Witness has been investigated in recent years that Vietnamese companies are involved in the deforestation, which is concentrated in the east and south area of Laos. The companies of Vietnamese HAGL group are primarily responsible for overexploitation. Next, mining project. Historic records from United States Geographical Survey or USGS. Lao PDR has 208 identified mines in digging. The most commonly listed primary commodities in Lao mines are gold, lead, and copper. Laos has 4 prospect mines and 223 mines in production. At the time, the data was entered into USGS records. The gold mines in operation are Phu Sepon, Phu Bia, Phu Kham, and Attapeu gold mines. A lot of gold are produced every day from these mines, but Lao people are still poor, and Lao PDR government has a lot of debts. Mining in Laos destroyed a lot of nature and life. The toxic chemical waste from mining plants poison the fish, animals, and human beings. My recommendations are, if Lao PDR government would like to continue mining, they should find a way how to help Lao people to have good living, how to reduce the debts, and keep the environment clean. They should keep the toxic chemical waste in safe place and safe container. Lao PDR government should stop foreign investors building the hydroelectric dams. They should stop allowing Vietnamese companies destroy the rainforest in Laos. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. To you, Mr. Dr. Chua Cooper. I'm done.
Thank you, Khamphene. And now I will hand it to Marcus Wiese to share with us information regarding the situation of the Sustainable Development Goals inside Laos. Marcus, you're on mute. There you go.
Ich muss mich einmal neu einwählen. Das passiert. Hallo? Alles ist schlimm. Auf einmal ist der Ton weg.
Bounthone, if you can please make me host, I'll show something while Marcus is preparing.
Okay, I have presentation for Marcus now.
Just trying to help.
Yes. Oh, Mr. Peng Sacksady is now. Just what Mr. Peng Sacksady is now.
Yes, but he just arrived.
Yes.
Peng, Sacksady, are you prepared to share about
Sure.
the situation in Laos? I know you're in Canberra, and I know there's been a lot of busy action regarding Australia in the news. Would you like to go and share with us the situation about the Sustainable Development Goals inside Laos?
Thank you, Dr. Joshua. Good morning, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Somehow this here is about 4 o'clock, and there's an earthquake in Australia, and my internet is not working properly. Okay. Poverty, inequalities, poor education system, poor healthcare system, plenty of corruption and bribery, and the fifth of the Lao people under the Lao Communist one-party state controlled by the Indochina Communist Party embedded in the Lao People's Revolutionary Party, set up by Ho Chi Minh since 1969. And the Lao People's Democratic Republic, Lao PDR, was declared on the 2nd of December 1975. I talk about SDG 8, 10 and 17. SDG 8, decent work and economic growth. Simple statistic. Lao PDR has an area of 237,955 square kilometers. Population 7,275,560. 2020 estimate. GDP estimate 19 billion $127 US, ranked 112. Revenue about 3 billion and expense about 4 billion. But I'd like to share with you the poverty in Laos, ranked at 84.40, equal to 6 million people, 140,573. And the rest, 1,134,987. The culture of corruption in Lao PDR government is as high as 14.4%. Corruption is about 2.7 billion US dollar per year. According to the UN Declaration of SDGs, decent work and economic growth must be faster, cheaper, and green money. Lao PDR is planning to become the battery for Asia to build hydroelectric dams to 100 dams by 2030. Land acquisition in agriculture, plantation of rubber, sugar, and bananas all over Laos, and land lease for special economic zones to 14 special economic zones in total, and mining to the core of 570 mines that exist in Laos. But all of these projects deals are in the hands of foreign investors. The impact are colossal, and nothing can support sustainable economic growth where youth employment, education, and training are in urgent need to be promoted to develop to a more global youth employment strategy. SDG 10, reduce inequalities. Reduce inequalities within and among countries. Inequalities started from the 2nd of December 1975 when up to 62,000 people went from the Lao royal government officials, including the king and queen of Laos, were captured and put in the Souvannasane, the seminar camp or re-education camp, or the death camp, where most of them died through hardship and torture. Inequality started when more than 500,000 of people escaped the country after the seizure of power by the communist Laos in 1975. Inequalities started when a Vietnamese-born Lao Prime Minister, Mr. Cây Son Phomvihan, and the Vietnamese Prime Minister Mr. Pham Van Dong signed the Lao-Vietnamese Treaty of Friendship on 18th of July 1977 for a one-sided nominal power politically and militarily to Vietnam. Inequality started when China influenced with One Belt, One Road or the Silk Road Initiative since 1988 through the bilateral partnership between the two countries. Inequalities within and among countries like Vietnam and China, when both of these two dominant power states came in with their cultural revolution, with Ho Chi Minh statues all over Laos and Chinatowns all over the place. The Sino-Vietnamese War, border disputes, 1979 to 1991 is still fresh in our memory. The Chinese death traps diplomacy, like the Bounthone-Vientiane Railway, of 414 kilometers long, put the Lao government of $6.8 billion in debt, and no decent work for the Lao people at large for such big amount of money spent. And to allow the Golden Triangle Casino, the King's Romance Casino in the province of Bokeo in northern Laos, owned by Zaway transnational criminal organization, is a crime. The United States Treasury Department imposed sanctions on Zaway TCO in 2018 for its involvement in illegal activities, wildlife trafficking, and other forms of transnational organized crime. As you can see, Chinatowns everywhere. This is cultural revolution by Vietnam and China in Lao PDR. SDG 17, Partnership for the Goal. Lao PDR is heading in the wrong direction in promoting the wrong economic management system to achieve the national sustainability development goal. Lao people must be aware of their problems and their involvement in the national security, transparency, and the accountability for the national economy. The partnership with the international management in association with international assistance and cooperation is very important. So far, the Lao PDR government is into the criminal operations of the culture of corruption in the national wealth for their own wealth. the bilateral partnership agreement deals over the socialist economic market system of turning national resources into capital of the Lao PDR with Vietnam, China, Thailand, and other countries oppressed the country with nothing else but national debt, poverty, and crimes. Invasion of crimes are crippling this country for 46 years since 1975. Under the authoritarian one-party regime of the Lao People's Revolutionary Party, we protest and urge UN to free Laos now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peng, for sharing that information. And now I believe Marcus is ready to share and speak as well.
Yes. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, Joshua. My name is Marcus Wiese. I'm the office manager of the ADL headquarter in Germany. I will speak about SDGs 3 health, 4 education, and 5 gender equality, and in connection with the other SDGs. I will therefore first talk about the basic problem in the education sector and later about the other topics. We have heard the VNR of the Lao government. The government of Laos has announced that it has made great strides in education policy in Laos. So it was proudly announced that the literacy rate is now 85%. However, if you take a closer look at the statistics published by the government, you will notice that these numbers have stagnated for some time. We made this opportunity to take a closer look and did some research. In fact, it is noticeable that only about 42% of the students pass the secondary school leaving certificate. In terms of the literacy rate, it is also noticeable that most of the pupils only have basic knowledge of reading and writing, as well as mathematics. We noticed that a large proportion of the students drop out of school permanently. The main reason for this persistent poverty is a persistent poverty problem in Laos, and girls are much more affected by early school leaving than boys. The extreme corruption in Laos amplifies the problems many times over. With the promise of a permanent position, the government of Laos lets exactly 9,809 teachers work on a voluntary basis up to 6 years. We couldn't find out where the funds from abroad to promote the education systems are going. Teacher salary were eventually not paid from it. But since the teachers have to make a living from something, they are forced to collect additional school fees from the parents of the students. In addition, the parents have to pay for school supplies themselves. That in turn leads to even more dropouts. But apparently, no aid money went into the construction and maintenance of the school buildings either. The students have to attend classes in deliberated makeshift buildings or on open air. The local population is supposedly forbidden to use wods to repair buildings from their own forests for environmental reasons. In fact, with the support of the authorities, the rainforests are being cleared to a large extent and sold to Vietnam in order to make their own profit. But even after school, it is difficult for young people to get a good education, let alone a good job. Because corruption has meanwhile also reached job placement in Laos. I'll give you one example. To get a job in Khamphene province, a job seeker has to pay 20 to 40 million kids to get a job, which corresponds about 2,000 to 4,000 US dollars. For this, they get a job for a monthly salary for only $52. The consequences of this undesirable development are dramatic. Many young people end up in forced labor abroad, and out of desperation or because of the extreme pressure for the reform, they are exposed to drugs, especially methamphetamines. Young women are also taken to China with a promise to marriage, where they disappear and lose all contacts with the families in Laos. The government said, and it's reported, it was running an awareness campaign to protect young women. However, since the internet and above all, social media are limited in Laos, and exchange about such experiences in Laos is very, very minimal. And since corrupt authorities are also involved in these cases, and any critics of the government and its institutions is prohibited, these grievances are more covered up than combated. Anyone looking for help in Laos to get out of the problems or drug addiction will look in vain. The health system is considered backward and also corrupt. If you don't have any money, you won't get any medical help. The families of the rich and the rulers go abroad for treatment, especially to Thailand. In the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic, the regime paints a very bad picture despite other pronouncements. A strict lockdown has now been imposed in many provinces, which is also monitored by the military. On the one hand, Laotian migrant workers who live abroad are put into large quarantine camps when they come back to Laos without any distance and with poor hygiene, where they infect each other. And on the other hand, the border is officiously open to migrant workers from China and Thailand. We have heard about a worker from Thailand, as an example, who came to Laos to repair machines in the textile industry, who infected 247 people in Laos with coronavirus. The good vaccines in Laos received from the European Union or the United States were only intended for members of the communist leadership and their families. The ordinary population has to be content with the less effective vaccine from China. We observed really chaotic conditions where the appointments for the vaccines came to a mass rush in which neither the distance nor the corona rules were observed. Ladies and gentlemen, we report these conditions because the people in Laos are forbidden to talk about them. We hope to be a mouthpiece for the disfranchised people in Laos. Thank you very much for your attention. And now I give the floor to Professor Cooper.
Thank you so much, Marcus, and we appreciate your thorough explanation of the true situation, but most importantly, looking, especially as the UN is meeting here in New York on COVID summit, to give an update of what's happening inside Laos for people who, when you talk about that situation of Chinese workers going across the border, but then infecting Lao people, and then the lack of true testing and more importantly, the actual vaccines so that they could be able to not get sick. And of course, that infection rate was extremely high. Bounthone, if you allow me to share screen again real quick, I could share two things that are happening today that builds on our speakers so far. As I know we only have, I think we're wrapping up with our presenters.
Thank you, Joshua. I will show you some slide from Mr. Kambane Anonthisen about deforestation and mining in Lao PDR. It's actually big problem. Mr. Kambane, you can tell something about this one.
Joshua wollte, dass du den Bildschirm teilst.
Tell about deforestation and mining.
Yes.
Deforestation in Laos is so bad, you know, because now in Laos, almost no more trees or forest or the land for farming or the land for living to the people, because the forest, the people living or depend on the forest. Since I were in Laos before, you know, we can live naturally. Before we don't have the electricity, we don't have the water from, you know, from the well, but we have the water naturally, no chemical. We can live before without the electricity. Okay, because the people before we live very good living.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kambane. You have some slide to show now. Okay, thank you, Joshua. I would like to speak about our summary now. Actually, in Lao PDR, we need the Lao PDR has big problems with SDG. Development in Lao PDR now is not sustainable development. The Lao people needs change the system to democratic, to multi-party system. And the Lao people need now Laos independent from China and from Vietnam. We need support from international organizations to pressure of China and Vietnam for independence for Laos. Thank you, Joshua.
Thank you, Bounthhom, for sharing that plea for peace. If you can now allow and hand the screen sharing to me, then I'd like to show two last things that support the information. Bounthhom, please make me the host.
Okay.
So supporting all of the information that's being shared, I just would like to share this important article that just came out. This research is looking at linking many of the points that all of our speakers have made. And it's from a very important journalistic research. And there you see the train that many have been talking about, but it's looking at these infrastructure projects of the Belt Road Initiative that many people raised and pointing out how it could harm nature and indigenous communities. So it reinforces a lot of what you've been saying, and more importantly, what you've heard from the people inside Laos. We think this is very important. It also does recognize some of the other issues of deforestation, illegal wildlife trafficking. And this new study was brand new, looking at the Belt Road Initiative in Southeast Asia. And I think it's one thing that must be considered as we look forward and we see what's happening. The other exciting thing that I'll say in our final moments is today also at the UN, they just launched the Sdg Action Zone. So here we are in New York, and what's exciting is we can all enter. And normally, of course, what is exciting is at this event, Alliance for Democracy in Laos would be here, sharing and attending some of these important discussions on many things that you raised. Today is poverty and inequality. Tomorrow we'll be looking at gender. And the final day on the 24th, we'll be looking at climate. So we appreciate you combining all of these three teams. And we hope next year you'll be able to join live again in a post-COVID or where we've reached the goal of what Biden shared yesterday of 70% of the world being fully vaccinated. And so I just wanted to share those two news items. I know we've already used our time today, but we do hope you join the Sdg Action Zone. It's part of the Sdg Strategy Hub. And we do thank you all for sharing the most recent information. And this, of course, is very valuable as we look at how we will continue. We will continue having our 6th annual UN SDG and Global Human Rights gathering throughout this week. We invite people to attend. One of the next exciting aspects, of course, that we can look at is the theme this year is Code Red, a call to realize human rights and protect our planet, applying moral pressure to achieve 2030 agenda in the Paris Agreement. And the work that you're doing inside Laos is a very important chapter to address the Code Red, which Secretary General Antonio Guterres has addressed. Later on today, we'll be looking more at the Pacific. And of course, if you look at Friday, we're looking at the ABCs of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. Of course, that'll be very important as Glasgow will take place November 1st through 12th. And we know Alliance for Democracy in Laos will be bringing the case forward of what is happening in that middle weekend of November 5th and 6th, where once again, we'll provide more updates of what's happening. And of course, many of the issues you talked about around the 2030 agenda are linked directly to the Paris Agreement. We know the forest of Laos is absolutely crucial, and we must make sure the deforestation ends. We must also make sure that there's no more mining and we release more carbon into the atmosphere as well. So we thank all of you for coming together from around the world to share about the human rights situation in Laos. And thank you again for participating in the 6th annual UN Sustainable Development Goals and Global Human Rights. Reminds me of the first one we did there in New York, where Bounthone, you were able to Skype in. And now, of course, everyone is Skyping into New York and using the technology to be able to speak truth to power and share the true reality of what's going on. Thank you all. Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you, sir.
Around the world.
Thank you.
And we look forward to seeing you at the next UN Sustainable Development Goals and Global Human Rights Summit in New York, but also at the Climate Summit in just 2 months. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Dr.
Bye-bye.
Cooper.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Mein Gott, hat das mit Strom gekostet. Akku ist leer.